Captain Midnight.
Most of the notable adaptations of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds attempt to tap into the cultural anxieties of their time. Whether it was Orson Welles harnessing the then fairly new power of radio news to tell the story in a strikingly believable way that people had never experienced before, the 1953 version pushing Cold War and atomic paranoia to the forefront, or Steven Spielberg's version being one of the first 2000s blockbusters to draw direct inspiration from 9/11 imagery, the faceless Martians of the original novel have proved very malleable. The core concept of the 1898 novel is so strong that many artists have been able to use it as a jumping off point to dive into whatever people fear in the present moment. Whatever else you can say about the new Amazon version of War of the Worlds, and you can say a lot, it is planted firmly in that tradition. War of the Worlds 2025 is a wonderfully ambitious and brutally limited film, all at once. A movie that seems dead set on jumping headfirst into some of the most hot button and important issues being debated today, and handling all of them with the delicacy and craft of an AI bot that's been exclusively trained on Redbox movie scripts. It's almost something special, just not in the way you want. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how I am actually kind of fascinated by this Zoom call style of film, and how even if this movie made every possible wrong choice, I hope filmmakers can still find ways to tell stories in this genre that actually engage with the digital world. So I'm going to talk about that today. How hilariously bad this movie is, yes, but also how I actually think there is something interesting under the mountain of bad and bizarre choices.
Coming to DVD, Tom Cruise, War of the Worlds.
So, alright, I'm gonna say something positive about this movie. Please, everyone, take a deep breath. I am kind of fascinated by the first 30 minutes or so of War of the Worlds. Don't get me wrong, they're not good, but I do think there are some worthwhile ideas here. Ice Cube plays Will Radford, a man working for a very ill-defined Homeland Security surveillance program, and a deeply creepy individual. We see him basically spying indiscriminately on the conversations of the public, but also paying close attention to what his kids are doing, even going so far as to monitor the contents of his pregnant daughter's fridge and scolding her on her food choices. It's easy and honestly very fair to knock Radford's dead wife backstory as very stock and cliche, but I think it at least provided a context for this character that I could see working. This is a guy with the surveillance power of the government at his fingertips who is invading the privacy of his loved ones because he feels the need to keep them safe. Like, that's a pretty dark story, and potentially an interesting one. There are moments where the movie kind of gestures around this. After a scene where Ice Cube saves his daughter by driving a Tesla remotely, which was made very funny by the fact that the traffic we see looks like, I don't know, like a light average afternoon in suburban DC, despite this being right next to a massive alien invasion. Anyway, that aside, there is a moment where his daughter Faith tells him that he's obsessed with control. Control he obviously does not have. Everything about this is executed in a very clunky and obvious manner, but I do think it suggests that there could have been something worthwhile here. If the movie was willing to engage with its lead character, instead of copping out and losing the thread on how messed up this guy is almost immediately. Of course, that just goes for so many aspects of this movie. Like I said, I think they have something here with this premise. I really do. Is it a challenge to make a computer screen-based movie like this compelling? Yes, but I do think it's doable. Just look at something like Searching. Ice Cube's character, who believes he has all this knowledge and power, just seeing any semblance of control he has over the situation crumble before his eyes, as he watches these alien horrors play out on his screens, is not a bad pitch to me. But it was always gonna be tough. This movie's take on the internet is so simplified and goofy that it feels like a parody, and on top of that, its understanding of geopolitics makes a Tom Clancy game look like an Adam Curtis documentary. But even putting that aside, which is a lot to put aside, when the whole movie takes place online, an area that most of the audience spends a lot of time on, and none of it feels remotely believable, that is a tough hurdle to get over. This definitely does not take place on any version of the internet that I recognize. So unlike Orson Welles' pitch-perfect version of 30s radio news in his Mercury Theater broadcast, its main gimmick works against it here because never for a moment does it allow the audience to buy into its world. I'm sure for many, though, its lame take on the internet might be pretty far down the list of War of the Worlds' biggest issues. Like, do you remember in 2020, all those cast reunions online, or those things hosted by Josh Gad? Like the cast of 30 Rock reprising their roles, or a bunch of celebs performing The Princess Bride? Yeah, basically all of those featured better Zoom meeting acting than this movie. It's pretty brutal. For this movie to have any semblance of hanging together at all, it really needed a tour de force performance at its center. And Ice Cube just does not deliver that. He was put in a bad spot. I doubt there's many actors who could have made this really sing or something. But for so much of the film, it feels like he was literally handed the script 10 minutes before filming, which, I don't know, could be the case. Then there's the movie's social commentary, which is so toothless and stupid that it's hard not to read it as pure contempt for the audience. It wants to posture as making some anti-authoritarian argument or some statement about government overreach, but it only gestures at that with like groan-worthy and dated anonymous references and Clark Gregg's really over-the-top villain. And even that, it totally undercuts with Amazon product placement. I just stopped for a second there because I got a notification that I got an Amazon package. So there you go. Like, I know this has been noted by a lot of people already, but nothing could prepare me for how hard it leans into that. The Amazon driver character, the constant notifications, the mentions in dialogue, and finally, the climax of the movie revolving around an Amazon purchase and its delivery on a drone. I mean, I was speechless. That was just incredible. I just cannot figure out how they didn't know how tone deaf this would come off, and how it would undercut any semblance of social commentary it's attempting. It was baffling. It is funny that this came out roughly the same time as Eddington, because whatever else you can say about that movie, it is an earnest attempt to reckon with the online world on screen, in a way that filmmakers have sometimes struggled with. War of the Worlds, in its own bizarre way, is trying to dip its toes into that water too, but it has zero perspective or insight on its subject. It feels like it doesn't want to engage with the topics it brings up. It wants to be a straight-to-DVD action movie from 2010, but it can't afford to be that either. It'd be easy to sit here and talk about like plot holes or strange editing choices or whatever. I think beyond that though, the biggest issue is that none of these conversations feel believable. That matters in any movie, but it's especially important when it comes to like a Zoom meeting movie like this, where so much of the film remaining engaging is just completely dependent on those conversations holding your attention. If you can't do that, almost nothing else matters. And they definitely can't. I don't know if it's the actors. I kind of doubt it. Like, I've seen many of them be good in other things. The director, or just the nature of how this thing was shot, not a second of it feels like a real conversation between two human beings. And that's more damning than anything you could say about the cheap alien effects. You know, I kind of set out to talk about how this movie attempts to use the internet to interesting ends and fails, but the more I thought about the movie itself, the more it just annoys me. The thing is, War of the Worlds 2025 just fails on so many basic filmmaking levels that it becomes very hard to get into the text of the film itself. I may think the core concept remains interesting, and I want great filmmakers to try to figure out how to make that world cinematic instead of just making period pieces. I find all that stuff really fascinating. But War of the Worlds stands out as a prime example of how all of that can go wrong. It's the worst movie I've seen this year, and probably will make it hard to try interesting experiments like this again. I know people enjoy it as a so bad it's good artifact, but for me, man, these 90 minutes really felt like 3 hours. So those were my thoughts on War of the Worlds. I'll be back soon for some stuff that I'm really excited to share. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate it. Oh, and for those of you who might be new to the channel, you might not know that I actually have a comic book that I wrote called Binary Sea. If you like pirates, sci-fi, 1800s sea tales, please check it out in the link below. I'm really proud of it, and I will see you next week.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too.